So after nearly 40 years, The Legend of Zelda comes out with a game where you actually play as Zelda. Took them long enough, and just like how they moved at a snail's pace to make this game, I decided to move at a snail's pace to review it. In all seriousness, it took me a while to really let my thoughts on the whole game form into a cohesive script, as well as some other reasons that kept me from making this video. If you want to know more, stick around until the end of the video to find out. With all of that out of the way, let's go! And just like with every review, we should start with the gameplay. The gameplay for Echoes of Wisdom is quite fun and engaging. It introduces a fairly unique mechanic to Zelda called Echoes. Echoes are what was shown in the trailer, where you can copy any object or defeat an enemy one time, and then you can summon a copy or echo of them for the rest of the game. Just because it was the most fun, let's start with the monster echoes. To put it simply, it's a clone of an enemy you can find in the game, and it will attack the same way that an enemy does in the wild. The only difference being is that it fights for you, and you can tell it to target other monsters. The object echoes are very straightforward. You copy a box, and then you can clone that box. Copy a bed, you can clone the bed. Copy my ever-growing sense of insecurity, and you get depression. Wait, that wasn't in the game. Moving on. However, it's not what you copy that makes it special. It's how you use the copies. The way you solve a puzzle now feels more varied than it did before. In the past, each Zelda puzzle required one specific method to solve it. This was usually because of time constraints or technical limitations, and is still kind of true in this game. Now, even if the way to solve the puzzle is the same, it can feel like you had some unique input as the player. An example is if you have a button that needs to be pressed, all you need to do is put something heavy on it. The answer is quite simple. But the fun comes from the fact that you get to choose the heavy object. Now, this isn't that special. I'm sure there are other games with similar mechanics out there, but it's the fact that it feels so smooth and that it's paired with Zelda for her first game. For instance, what are the two things we know about Zelda the character? 1, she's a princess, and 2, she has the Triforce of Wisdom. Well, royalty is generally known for having the ability to command forces and having nearly infinite resources needed at any given moment. This is manifested into the ability to have minions who fight for you, and having infinite carrots on hand. Don't judge, we all gotta eat. How does this connect to the Triforce of Wisdom, you may ask? Well, when I think of wisdom, I think problem solving, or in this case, puzzle solving. And one of the big complaints that people had with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is the lack of traditional Zelda dungeons and Zelda puzzles. Well, this game brings back both. And I have to say, while the puzzles weren't mind-blowing, there were a few that had me a little bit stumped. Yeah, not one of my finest moments. But you know what would make this a really fun moment? If you liked and subscribed. Still got it! Getting back on Spirit Tracks, there is another mechanic in this game called Bind. With this, you connect yourself to a creature or object, and it now moves in the direction you do. Or you can hold down the ZR button, and now you move in the direction the object moves. This again isn't the most amazing thing ever, but the way it's implemented and the puzzle it's connected to are both fun and engaging. I gotta say, this is really Nintendo being in top form and having their games connect to what the audiences want. And one thing every Zelda fan wants is exploration. Now, Zelda games have always had an odd relationship with exploration. In Wind Waker, there was the giant grid map of water that goes on seemingly forever, with various islands that you can discover and chart. You might find a treasure chest containing rupees, or a puzzle that gives you a piece of heart. Other times you kill a giant squid and a fairy gives you a special upgrade. Yeah, I don't get it either, your guess is as good as mine. Twilight Princess had the large Hyrule field with not that much in it, but they did have golden bugs that you can find that will give you rupees. Sometimes you find a puzzle that gives you a piece of heart. And sometimes there will be a quest that can give you more bottles or upgrades for different other items. Then in Spirit Tracks, you can find rupees, rabbits, train parts, and piece of hearts. Do you see the pattern yet? So in this game, the collectibles you can find are pretty obvious. You have your rupees and your piece of hearts, but they do have some unique collectibles added in just this game. For starters, just like in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you can get ingredients. These ingredients are used for making food just like in the previous game, but instead of there being a bunch of different types of dishes, there's just smoothies. Also, instead of being able to use up to 5 items to make a dish, you can only use 2, and so it limits the amount of things you can make. There are still different effects based on the ingredients you put in, but it does feel a little limited and makes the game feel a little smaller in comparison. The other main collectibles are the mic crystals. See, in this story, Link has the Sword of Might, which was made from the Might Crystals by Impa's brother. Throughout the game, you'll find a dark version of Link that you'll have to fight. Once you beat him, he'll drop an item. The first one of those being the Sword of Might. Once you pick it up, you now get the ability to transform into your Sword Fighter form. Yes, they call it that instead of Hero form or Hero mode. Don't yell at me, I only work here. This ability transforms Zelda into Link temporarily, allowing you to slash and stab your enemies just like the legendary hero. The second item you get from defeating this Dark Link is his bow. Once you've collected that, you now have the ability to use the hero's bow while you're in Sword Fighter form. And then the third one being bombs, which now allows you to throw bombs in Sword Fighter form. Now I'm going to be completely transparent here. I like this mode, but I generally ended up saving it for boss fights or extremely annoyingly tough enemies. I didn't use it that much out in the world. And I didn't really upgrade all the parts of it. Let me explain. See, the Might Crystals I mentioned earlier can be used to upgrade your Sword Fighter form, either allowing you to stay in your Sword Fighter form for longer, upgrading the damage of your sword, your bow, or your bombs. While this is a fun collectible to get from time to time, I saw zero need to upgrade the bow or the bombs. I only ever upgraded the sword damage and the meter for length of use. Does this mean they're useless? No, I saw a few videos showing what the upgrades give you, and they're pretty neat, but I also saw no reason to really get those upgrades. Especially since the sword does so much damage by itself, and most of the enemies in Zelda games stay grounded anyways. Whenever there was a flying enemy, I would just summon a bird to fight them for me, or maybe a Wizrobe, or these high-level Lizalos that can just jump up and stab them anyways. Also, since you get 5 Might Crystals at the end of each dungeon, I didn't really feel the need to go out looking for them very often. So as a collectible, they weren't really that amazing, but they were fine enough. And, you know, there were some cute side quests connected to collecting these Might Crystals. Speaking of which, the side quests weren't amazing, but they were cute enough for a smaller Zelda title. There's your classic bring all the cuckoos to the pen. There's a mom who asks you to bring her son a fried fish. There's also one where an old man is missing his pet cat, and he asks you to get a cat costume that lets you talk to cats so that way he can find out where his cat went. Man, why can't I have one of these in real life? So while I don't think these quests are going to be talked about and debated like the fossil quest from Breath of the Wild, I still think they did a decent job creating characters and quests connected to them that both felt fun and real to the Legend of Zelda world. Speaking of fun and real to the Legend of Zelda world, let's tackle the best part of any legend: story. The story for this game is pretty straightforward. Bad things are happening in Hyrule, and it's your job to fix it. And you're 3 minutes late, I'm gonna have to take it off your rupee check. This time, it's the dark rifts that are appearing, sucking up buildings and people. The difference being that it's Zelda's job to go around cleaning up Hyrule. The story simply starts with Link beating Ganon. And just like we saw in the trailer, Zelda barely managed to escape the void and returns to her father, the king. Then in the middle of telling him and his 2 advisors about the mysterious swordsman who saved her, a rift opens up and almost snatches up Zelda, but her father pushes her out of the way at the last second. Then after her father and his 2 advisors are sucked in, 3 dark blobs form from the void, and they become her father and the 2 advisors. Then they immediately yell for the guards to come in and say Zelda is the one making the rifts, and demands she must be thrown in jail. While Zelda is waiting in the dungeon for her punishment, a little yellow orb shows up calling himself Tri, and gives Zelda the Tri-Rod, which is how she's able to make copies or echoes of objects and enemies. For the most part, the game follows the same structure of any Zelda. You go to a few locations, clear out the voids, then once you get to the halfway point, it turns out there are more dangerous areas you have to enter to clear out more voids. Then, in the final act of the game, we get one of the biggest lore dumps in Zelda in a while. Spoiler warning for those of you who haven't had the chance to play yet. So if you want to wait, go play the game, come back to this point in the video, then continue. Is that understood? Okay then, let's continue. So it turns out these voids are being created by a creature called Null. See, before there was life, there was nothing, just the empty void. And occasionally, things would appear in the void. And this Null creature would eat them, and they would disappear. That is until one day, the 3 goddesses, Din, Nehru, and Ferore, were born. And they were too fast for Null to capture them. As they continued to avoid his grasp, they grew in power until eventually they created the Prime Energy. They then used the power of the Prime Energy to create the Earth, and that became the prison for the creature Null. However, Null still wanted the world to disappear and return everything to nothingness in the void. So, from his prison inside the Earth, he would create voids on the surface to slowly eat away at his prison. So to clean up the voids, the goddesses created Tri and a bunch of other creatures that look like him, and their main goal was to use their power to seal the voids and return the world to the way it was before the voids would show up. So Null plotted and schemed, and eventually he decided to create mass panic with these voids in spots where the seals to the prime energy are kept. This forces Zelda and Tri to go there to not only clean out these voids, but in doing so gives Zelda a key from the goddesses to the prime energy. And once she has the power to access the prime energy, Null shows up and creates an echo of Zelda. And as we know, echoes are exact copies. And this is an exact copy of Zelda that has the seals of the prime energy. However, it works for Null. So the final section of the game is getting the prime energy protected by the Deku tree. And once we get inside, it turns out the prime energy is the Triforce. Honestly, I was a little mad at myself for not figuring this out sooner. Then, once you get the prime energy and save Link from Null, the two of you together defeat him, bringing the world back into balance. And that's the story of The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. I thought it was a pretty fun and engaging, and I loved the new lore that was added. This kind of reminded me of the feeling of when I first played Ocarina of Time, when we get that cutscene about the golden goddesses creating the world, and then creating the Triforce and leaving it in the Sacred Realm. It was kind of nice to have that feeling again. The last Zelda game where I felt genuinely surprised by the events and like I was really learning something new about the whole universe of Zelda was Skyward Sword, to be honest. So I felt really happy returning to that. Not just the feeling of surprise and new lore, but the adventurous feeling I get from a Zelda title. And you can't have a great Zelda adventure without some great music. The music in Echoes of Wisdom is very pretty. The original tracks remind me a lot of older movies, like the classic fanfare or the adventurous feeling in old mythology action films, which I did like and made me feel like I was on a medieval adventure. Along with that, I noticed a lot of songs that were revamps of past Zelda songs. Like when you fight Evil Link, it plays a twisted version of The Legend of Zelda. When you fight Echo Zelda, it has a revamped version of Zelda's Lullaby. Even the overworld theme has some of the classic Zelda music remade into its own theme. This is pretty much expected at this point. CS Zelda fans are obsessed with our Zelda music. And a lot of Zelda songs are almost as iconic as the name Zelda itself. However, I will say I don't think there are any songs in this soundtrack that will become fan favorites anytime soon. While yes, they are beautiful in their own right, none of them stuck in my head like Gerudo Desert, Midna's Lament, or The Great Sea. Again, songs like Southern Village are cute, but none of them go as hard as Saria's song. Let's get this party started! Turn that ocarina up, brother! Taking all these things I've said into account does give me a few ideas and beliefs about the future of The Legend of Zelda the series. So let's wrap this video up with my final thoughts and predictions. After finishing Echoes of Wisdom and letting the whole totality of this game sink into my brain for a few weeks, I have to say this was a fun Zelda game. Is it one of my favorites? No, it doesn't get the high highs of games like Twilight Princess or Majora's Mask. But it also doesn't hit the low lows of Skyward Sword or Breath of the Wild. It fills a nice middle area that was missing in the most recent titles. It brings back puzzles and the more linear story, brings back the importance of the Triforce and the three goddesses. I mean, it gives Link his green tunic back, so that already makes it a 10 out of 10. Alright, video done, wrap it up! In all seriousness, this game really feels like it was made for the traditional Zelda fan like me. And this is where I get into a little bit of speculation. See, we all know that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom sold like gangbusters, with the latter selling over 20 million copies. This is clearly the new style Nintendo wants to keep developing and what a lot of people really want to play. While I may not love it like most people do, I still think they do some great things for the Zelda series and gaming as a whole. Now, when I look at Echoes of Wisdom, it's sold about 1/10 of Tears of the Kingdom sales, around 2.6 million at the time of this recording. So I think Nintendo has a special plan going forward. I think they will continue to make newer, bigger, more expansive Zelda titles where they can continue to try out new mechanics like climbing on walls and merging machinery and things like that. While on the side, they'll make these smaller titles for traditional Zelda fans like myself. Now, I have no evidence or insider secrets to prove this. Believe it or not, my uncle does not work at Nintendo. I just looked up some basic data, then took what Nintendo and the fans have been saying about Zelda for the past few years, and came to this conclusion. In summary, this game is really fun, and it returns to traditional Zelda. Does this mean the whole franchise will return to this format? No, most likely not. Does this mean they will only do their big open world games for all eternity? Clearly, someone at Zelda likes these smaller titles and traditional formats. So we will be getting more games like this, just spread out more. This way they can spend their main attention on the big sellers, and then use the money from the big sellers to make these smaller titles that make the main core fan base happy. Personally, that's fine with me. It makes a lot of sense to do as a business tactic, and I just get more games that way. Do the big title that lots of people love, so you can make lots of money and use some of that money to make more games catered to players like myself. I think that makes everyone happy, really. That's all I really have to say about Echoes of Wisdom. If you like Zelda, I suggest you play it, and if not, thanks for sticking around until the end of the video to hear my uncontrolled thoughts about The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. Hey there everyone, thanks for sticking around to the end. As you can tell, this video took me quite a while to make, and it's because of a lot of different factors. See, I suffered through a lot of different issues, anxiety, ADHD, a little bit of depression here and there. And those all got in the way of me trying to finish this video. I actually wanted to finish it almost 2 weeks after the game was done. I was nearly done. This is how much I had done in November, and it's now January, so you can tell that I got kind of sidetracked. And I don't say this to throw a pity party, but because I know there are other people out there who are like me, who suffer through these things. And I just want you to know, you're not alone. There are so many of us out there in the world, and it makes it really hard to get things done. And we always feel like we're 1 step, 10 step, a million steps behind everyone else around us. Just remember, you can accomplish great things too. If I can make this video and you can watch it till this point, then you can do anything. I promise you that. So I just wanted to tell you all that at the end of this video as a real big thank you to everyone who watched it and everyone who subscribes and likes and comments. If you have trouble getting any projects done, comment down below and let me know. Anyways, thank you again. Hope you have a nice day. And remember, don't believe in yourself. Believe in me, who believes in you. Bye-bye.